Welcome to the Family Pictures Podcast. I'm Michael Branson Smith here with
Jim Groom.
Jimmy Groom, I've heard, is also
Jimmy.
his close friends will call him by, and I think I've reached that status at this point.
Don't call me Jimmy Groom. If you see me on the streets and you want to come and you want to get my fucking autograph, don't call me Jimmy Groom. Call me Jim Groom.
Jim Groom.
Jim, it's stronger.
And as I've learned in the pre-show, that Jim is all bronzata from his 3-week
Very bronzata
sabbatical. And I thought that was a nice pastry, and I was like, "Oh, you had a lot to eat. That's so nice."
Bronzata in Italian means tan.
Yes,
and I spent 3 weeks pretty much on the beach every day getting bronzata, which means tan. Michael thought I was a big pastry, which some might argue I am a fat pastry on the beach. That's not neither here nor there. I'm tan is what I am.
And so we are here on episode 72 and the fourth film of this kind of 1990s independent international films focus with Raise the Red Lantern. You know, just for those that are keeping up, we started with Muriel's Wedding, the PJ Hogan Australian film.
Muriel.
Yeah. And then we watched the Iranian film by Jafar Panahi. The White Balloon. And
amazing. I hadn't seen it before. It blew my
mind.
I
hadn't either. And then now I'm blanking. Oh yeah, we went back to Life is Sweet. Back to an English speaking film, and now we're with
Mike Lee's Life is Sweet.
Yeah, and now we're with Raise the Red Lantern, the 1991 film directed by Zhang Yimou, who represented kind of the out of the cultural revolution of the 60s and 70s, the what would be the first generation of filmmakers after that, but is really known as the fifth generation of Chinese filmmakers. Don't ask us what the first four were about.
Exactly. I wish I used to hang out when I was in ed tech at UMW with a historian who did Chinese history. Her name was Sue Fernsebner. She was awesome. And she did a Chinese film class. And I never did ask her, like, why is this the fifth generation?
Yeah.
What were the other four generations? So I will ask her. If we do Chinese films and we do go deep into it, I'm going to see if I can get her as a special guest. She would probably do it.
Oh, that would be really cool. Yeah. And it makes me think of this generation is basically all graduates of the Beijing Film Academy from the 1980s. And it reminds me of like the second wave, you know, where the Spielbergs and whatnot all came out of film school, like in Coppola and all them. They had all gone to film school. So these are people that had studied film. And I think this is where probably Western influence probably creeps into, Chinese filmmaking probably for one of the first times, because I can imagine they found their way into film school, even though they might have been considered, illicit, potentially. I don't know. Again, this is where it'd be wonderful to talk to an actual historian who knows a lot more. But it's interesting. Just a couple notes that are interesting is, Zhang Yimou had his education delayed by the Cultural Revolution, right? Totally. He started film school at age 28 because he'd spent the prior 10 years as a laborer on a farm for 3 years, and then another 7 years in a cotton textile mill. And he needed special permission to be allowed to go to film school because the cutoff age was 22, but he had advocates. He was from a family of means. I think his mother was a doctor. I can't remember what his father was. I'm just kind of remembering. And but he had been, used whatever money he had to buy a camera. He sold his blood. Again, this is like fact checking. All this would be great, but it was like description was like he sold his blood to buy a camera. Like, what the fuck? And his still photography is what got him into film school. And he was gonna be a cinematographer initially, and he did his first role in 1985. Was for the film Yellow Earth. And that becomes kind of the first Chinese film recognized by the West as like, artistic merit. And then 3 years later does his first film. He directs Red Sorghum, which also starred Young Lee, and they had a long time collaboration and even had a relationship that fell apart because a producer soured it. Like I love these like sordid details, which is pretty great. That stuff.
I didn't even
Um,
know this. See, again,
yeah.
Michael is the workhorse podcast. I'm the good looks. I'm
So
the Franzata Italian over here.
so this is the third film that Young Lee. She's in very famous Chinese actress, and this was their third collaboration. And they went on to do, I think it was like 9 or 11 films. It's one of the two numbers. And they actually were in a relationship for a period of time, though they never married. And that was a point of contention, but that would maybe rumor. And this producer was jealous of the relationship. I don't know. I love that kind of stuff. And I wish, that would be stuff like Page Six stuff. It'd be awesome. Where's the Chinese Page Six about, Zhang
It's out
Yimou
there
and Young
somewhere.
Lee. Yeah. And Zhang Yimou is like huge in China. Like he directed all the visuals for both their Winter and Summer Olympics, the Beijing Olympics. I mean, I didn't know I knew him already because I had, this was the first time I'd seen this film. And I mean, I've mentioned this before. I'm a huge Wuxia film fan. Like I love karate films of like, especially the, pre, like King Dynasty kind of,
Sure.
karate
One
and
on
kung
boxer.
fu. No, no, none of the modern stuff. The word boxer doesn't come up. It's all
What?
like, and I mentioned these to you with the crane
One
style
on
versus
boxer.
tiger
It's like
style. And
that's like one on boxer. And like
uh,
and isn't that like uh what is it called? Master of the Flying Guillotine? Those
uh,
are all right around the same time, and they're like 70s.
yeah, no,
People
that's true.
what,
What are the
70s?
two, the brothers, the crane
Yeah,
style
the Shaw
versus
Brothers.
the Shaw brothers? Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
that's one on boxer guy.
yeah, yeah.
Damn it.
Sorry about that, my friends. And yeah, this is gosh, I wish I can remember this. I would download these films finally. This is what it's so wonderful that you can find all this stuff now.
How
And
do you find it, Michael? What do you do to find all this stuff?
I use the internet and torrents. And I hear you've taught your son how to do the same, which is the
My
best way.
son is a torrent machine now.
Yeah.
He's like,
Yeah.
"Dad, tell me what you want. I'm gonna like it on Plex." And then all of a sudden, this Rube Goldberg machine goes into work. I have everything I ever wanted. It's
It's
awesome.
true. And so wait, now I'm lost. Oh, and so what's interesting is these films, his first film as a director. So thought he was going to be a cinematographer, goes on to be a director. And his first film he does, Red Sorghum, goes on to become the first Chinese film nominated for an Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film. And that's what I was saying. I knew him through Hero, Jet Li, which is this
Exactly.
luscious, colorful film, and it's amazing. That's what I was talking about
And
before.
it's interesting to go from like Red Sorghum to Hero as a single
Yeah,
director. It's like
yeah,
following the rise of China
yeah.
post
It's
Film
true.
Square, right? Like he is like a director who really traces the trajectory of China's real rise in the late
Mm.
80s, early 90s through the 2000s. It's really interesting as a career.
Yeah, I mean, and just like starting from really simple filmmaking to making like a huge epic. I mean, it makes me think of like, you know, going from making The Conversation to then doing The Godfather and Apocalypse Now, of Coppola. It's like they're slowly but surely giving you more and more sets of keys to many cars on the lot as they see you being successful, and then your ambitions get bigger. Um,
It's potentially a really good comparison too
yeah.
between him and Coppola.
Yeah. And so what's interesting, and so this film, obviously this is a family pictures podcast, and what's interesting about this film is there's some technically there's a few children in this film, and usually that's kind of the benchmark. Like if there aren't engagements between siblings or between children and parents, and it's just relationships, we're like, not so much a family. That's more of a relationship movie. but in fact, because this is about concubine, right?
Concubine.
Conc- and set in
You know what?
1920s.
Edit that out, please, Mike.
Yeah, there's no
In
editing, Jim. Sorry.
post-production, edit that out.
I can't fix that. I don't know how. My media skills
No,
have all diminished so much in the
Romania.
past 20 years. And what's interesting is that with being a concubine film, where it's set in 1920, and this is kind of pre-Maoist, just China. And one of the interesting things I was looking at, it's all shot on what's known as the Kiao family compound, and Cao Zhang, Zhiyang was a merchant banker who had built, or was the most famous of the family members that lived there at the very end of the 19th century. And he was like a total war merchant, right? He propped up the Qing dynasty in the late 19th century and was like one of your early bankers. And he was a huge like operations guy and really good at like sorting out the bad shipping of supplies out to the Western Front. And he fixed all that and made enormous amounts of money. And it changed my thinking about this character. And I was like, oh, this is a nasty banker type. I fucking hate this guy Chen, the Chen family. It's like he's like a blood sucking leech on society, and it made it even more interesting to me.
I think so. Like, you know, I'll give you a little bit of a background of why I picked the story. So for those out there listening, this is something I was like, look, I would really like to do this one. And to Michael's point, this movie, Raised a Red Lantern from 1991, doesn't really deal with the traditional sense of family.
Right.
But what does happen is you start to get this sense of, you know, you know, dictatorial husband slash father,
Down
a,
with the patriarchy.
exactly, a number of wives, at least when most of the movie it's for four different sister wives, as they call them, and then
Hmm.
servants, and then really off to the side who you rarely ever see as children. And what's interesting to me about this movie is the way in which not only it deals with space, because I find the spaces of this movie just magical and the visuals
Yeah, it's
amazing,
beautiful. Yeah.
beautiful. But in fact, it looks at my kind of whole big hot take on this movie is it looks at the family as system. And so
Uh-huh.
him as a banker in all the worst ways that you're talking about, and then taking that and kind of mapping that on top of him as a husband and a father in this system is super interesting, right? Because I think, they're using this to early fifth generation, the fifth generation filmmakers were pretty political filmmakers. This was coming after Tiananmen Square. There was a lot of kind of change going on in China. And so basically, they're using this film, harkening back to the 1920s, to talk very much about the system within which they find themselves in the early 90s in China. And so, for that, when I saw this in the theater in 1992 or 93 or whenever it was, I hadn't really seen a Chinese film besides the karate films. And I was
Mm.
like, wow, what is this? You know what I mean? Like, I was like, this is a whole brave new world of cinema, and it's obviously saying something about China at a moment when I think in retrospect, we're like, this was the beginning of China's, open economic policy, but more and more strict kind of social policies around control. And this is the beginning of that. And I think this movie maps a lot of that very early. And this is an extremely political film that you wonder how he got through. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it makes me think of like the 1950s science fiction films like the Body Snatchers, and it's a slick hidden commentary on like the Red Scare and McCarthyism by using this world that's inaccessible to our modern thinking, right? It's like, oh, we would never behave this way right now, right? And so science fiction, literally, it's otherworldly, so it's not possible to understand how people truly behave in a situation where aliens show up. And so by using like feudal, warlord era of China, pre-Maoist times, they can hide in there the oppression of women, right, and the oppression of the individual by the system, because that system is gone now. It's othering in that sense, but it is a subtle commentary on today at the same time. Which you're right. I think that's very clever way of kind of digesting what we think Zhang's going after, because he still is a Chinese filmmaker living in China, so he can't like openly comment on his thinking. And the other one that was interesting, his family, many of his family, like his uncles and a brother, I think, were part of the Chiang Kai-shek nationalist movement that went off to Taiwan, right? So he has a part of his family that lives apart from him, right, historically. So that went the kind of Western direction, if you will, the old regime, um, rather than the Mao direction that he stayed underneath and is still technically underneath in the communist regime.
Yeah, although this is where you're starting to see that change. And I think it's interesting that fifth generation comes up with that change. And there's so many movies we could look at, and there's much more research and maybe smarter people to bring in for that. But like that was for me when we talk about 90s international films that kind of opened up this idea, I immediately saw this film and I thought of like family as system, family as political
Mm,
allegory, where the actual sister wives are these political factions that are kind of, fighting with one another. And then they get the brunt of it are the people beneath, which is the peasants, which is the laborers or
right.
the
Yana the maid. Yeah.
housekeepers. Like
Yeah.
it has its own little like allegory of the society at work. It's
Yeah.
so cool. And then the whole compound, which you never leave for the entire movie,
Mm,
kind of becomes the world within your wish. And it's
yeah.
just so cool. I just love that about this
And there's
movie.
no escaping that world. Like, it is a classic, like, upstairs downstairs kind of story, of the lords and the servants, if you will, of the house, and those that are in the middle, like where the wife, sisters, the mistresses, all are kind of in the middle. They feel, and we're going to talk a lot about this, is how they are working with one another until it doesn't benefit themselves, and so then they're working against each other, and they're scheming for the favor of the master, and the idea of the master is really interesting. But we should introduce the characters at least a little bit. So there's Song Lian, who's basically 19 years old and was a university student, and she is forced to leave university because her father has died, who worked in the tea industry. And the film starts with her we're literally in the middle of a conversation between she and her stepmother, about her future. And Song Lian is compelled by her circumstances to marry a wealthy person, but knowingly becoming a part of a concubine. She is not going to be the first wife. She's going to be, in this case, the fourth mistress. So the fourth person that this master marries. And we'll meet the rest of the sisters, her sisters, as we move forward. But it's interesting to start with the master, in a sense, in the quote unquote. We're describing already his kind of patriarchal position in this household, where he is absolute. And in the context of this, as a filmmaker, Zhang literally never shows him close up, right? He's never shown, like, there's one of the very early when Song Lian on her wedding night is on the bedside sitting next to him, and it's almost like it's a two shot that's been just like moved to the right, and so you literally only see his arm at the edge of the frame, right? And then we see all these very long shots, and you can see his face, but because it's so far away, you really never see him. And then again, like, or he'll be behind like these curtains, if you will. And so he's intentionally not visible clearly because we don't need to. It's like, oh, we're instead meant to, through the women's point of view primarily, which is very smart, but it's his dictatorial kind of sets of rules dominate, not him. We don't need to see him ever. It's the rules that persist around him that he
And the
leads by.
I love those. I mean, and bringing that up right away is great because he is always somehow masked. You almost feel like you see him, but you can never really
Yeah,
put your arms around him or make him out or any definition. And for me, that was kind of a brilliant move on the director's part to kind of suggest the relationship to power,
yeah,
right? That relationship to power is always a long shot. It's
yeah,
always far away. You can never really see it or understand it. And you're in the position of these various sister wives who, as a result, are fighting for power amongst each other
right.
rather than coming together in solidarity to deal with that power they can't truly understand or even see. And there's
Hmm.
this interesting, like from the get go, this movie is so political that
Yeah,
it's just so wonderful to kind of think of it as a political allegory on top of it. And the fact that she's a student, right? You know, the 1989 moment with the tanks, you know, in the square, those were students, right? They were the
yeah,
students who were standing up against the military complex of China. And so to put her as a student just a year or change later
yeah.
and
It's really
her
wild.
as a student is really kind of, I mean, I don't know, it's pretty in your face, I think, like what he's doing.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising in retrospect that this was pulled off, and in large part because like the authority of the house is maintained, that it probably
Yeah,
skirts through, and we'll get there and talk about that. But it's like, so Song Lian is introduced to the rules of the house very early on, and the notion of that. You know, it's the second mistress who's very cordial, and versus the first wife who's just like, how old are you, and then tells her to leave, and calls her a sinner basically from the jump, right? When she's probably speaking of her husband more than anything. But she has to, like you described already, she has to impose her displeasure on her sister rather than her husband, because
yeah,
if you showcase any displeasure with your patriarch, you're not gonna get anywhere. You're gonna fall into the wayside, because you will literally have the red lanterns taken away. And that's the next thing she learns from her second sister, is that each evening the master, when he arrives, he makes his decision, and one of his servants places this giant red lantern, and they're all made to stand. And it's kind of cool because it's kind of like this courtyard, but it's like it's I mean, if for those that are more familiar with like medieval like architecture, it's like it's kind of like a pathway between, these giant walls of stone like you might see in a castle, and it is a form of a castle. It's just Chinese architecture instead. um
beautiful.
with this cobblestone road, and all four of the women are each standing at the doorway to their house. Each in effect has their own household, each woman with her own entourage of housekeepers and servants, and there's made to stand and look for his arrival, even though we never see him in any of these moments, and we never hear him either. But what we do hear is the pronouncement, and this is a big part of this film, is the aligning, and the hierarchy is a very public facing event, right?
Totally. I mean, who gets to spend the night with the master is who gets all the, amenities like the foot massage, which becomes this addictive thing that people really want. They
Yeah.
can choose the menu, right?
Hmm.
I mean, and they get his attention. And it immediately, this system immediately creates competition
Yeah.
amongst it. So for one to lose, three others, for one to win, three others have to lose. And there is immediately amongst the sister wives these machinations and, backbiting and all of these kind of talking about. And that is a super interesting part of this movie, is just how each of the sister wives have their own identity, but also are kind of using are within the system, and as a result of that are trying to figure out how to best work within it. Whereas our kind of fourth mistress is the educated one who you think and hope is going to see through it, right? And there are moments where you
Mm.
get glimpse where she might see through it. But, that's a kind of bigger question we can talk about. But it's so interesting how it sets up immediately this kind of system of competition, which is also where China's going, right? China's trying to keep its traditional sensibilities while also moving to essentially a capitalist economy. And they're starting to feel what the rest of the world has been feeling under capitalism for a while, the haves and have
Mhm.
nots. And that is becoming a little bit more exacerbated. Again, this is so clear in this movie.
Yeah, and very much so, they are compelled to target one another, um, whenever they're disgruntled. Like they can't punch upward, right? And try to push back. And there are moments when Song Lian does push back early on against the master. The first one being when she comes back from a dinner, one of the dinners, and I think the background you can see here. I'll read for those that are on the YouTube. You can see clearly this is the arrangement of the four sisters, and we see the face of in the background of the first wife, and flanked left and right by second mistress and third mistress, and then Songlin, who's the fourth mistress, is to our back, or has her back to us because she's the least present in a sense, right? Of the family so far, she has the least, supposedly the lowest uh, um, in the hierarchy, but in fact, because she's so young and she's the new hot thing for our master, she of course is going to be getting a lot of attention. But she comes back from one of these dinners and finds her master having been flirting or hand grabbing the help, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and Yanar is Song Lian's maid, and they do not get along, sadly. So she's more upset about this. And the thing is, like, understandably, Songlian's like upset, okay, and pushes back against the master, and he's not having any of it. He's like, "Hey, others are desperate for a foot massage, my friends. Like, if you don't want me, you don't want me." And this immediately leads to she has her lanterns blown out, and he goes to house number three, which is Mei Shan's house, the third mistress. She's the former opera singer.
Yeah, who's a wonderful character too. And she's also managing her relationship. So Mei Xiang, if you remember, she's the one who the first night of the fourth mistress or
Songlin, yeah.
Songlin and the master together, she has her servant go to Songlin's door and say, "Look, master, she's she needs you. She doesn't know what she'll do." And then, of course,
She's
you know,
sick. I'm sick.
exactly. "I can't stay at school. I gotta come home. Come pick me up, Dad." So, like, it's the same idea, right? Where she's kind of using, her, whatever it is, she's somewhat of a savvy character, using that to not only piss off the mistress for, but to get closer to the husband. And just almost right away in this movie, that kind of dynamic is set up. And you
Yeah.
begin to see, just how kind of toxic this whole environment is.
Yeah, and in the lanterns are the representation of the control system. That, and it's like it's through the pleasure, of the foot massage, and it's truly fetishized in the film. It's really fun because like it's like, oh my god, that's the best fucking foot massage ever. It's like,
And
have you ever given someone a foot massage and it meant nothing, Jim Groom?
well, I guess, and I learned this from Red Sorghum.
I ain't do no tickling nor nothing.
Well, I mean, I
You're
guess
not
there
catching
is.
my Pulp Fiction
Are
references,
you
Jim. What the
done yet?
fuck?
I can't. I can't do everything, Michael. I can't. I can't podcast,
I
get
got
you
all
both.
my technique down and everything.
I got you. Well, maybe he was quoting this because I guess in Red Sorghum you learn, and here too, and it's not just like, the director has a foot fetish. I guess in Chinese culture, right? The foot is a highly eroticized part of the body. And so to be focusing on the foot, like they do in Red Sorghum when there's that kind of, interchange between her and one of the carriers, it's almost like it's almost like an affair. And so, like,
Mm,
them having that foot massage is deeply erotic too, you know what I
mhm.
mean? And it's a strange way because it's also eroticized without a man there.
Right.
So
Well, it
there's
is
that
later
whole
on
other.
because we do have Meishan playing footsie with the doctor at the mahjong
Yes,
table,
we
you
do.
know, so, which is probably a reference to that as well, and how it is very much a clear, bright line that you can't go by. Well, not that you could get away with footsie with anybody that's not your wife. And no,
Well,
it's just a friendly touch with my foot.
according to Pulp Fiction, now
What
I
are
see
you
where
talking
you're going.
about?
It's nothing you would throw a guy out a window for.
And so, Songlian is quickly learning the rules of the house as she's now left untouched and she is without her lanterns. And, she is buying into this system at first. And this is in contrast to her portrait of individuality that did exist. Like,
Yeah,
because when she first talks about this, how she's now out of favor with the second sister, Zoyoung, and the one that's been very nice to her and is speaking negatively of Mei Shan because she seems difficult. She was the last to introduce herself to Songlian, and so Songlian is taught by the second sister, Zoyoung, that stay away from her. She's trouble. She's dramatic, and she's kind of buying into this story. And she's trying to teach her. It's like, you know, you've got to get your power back. You should be working hard to have a son. That's the only way that you're going to have any stature in this. I myself, as the second sister, I had a daughter. She's useless. And this is right in front of her daughter. It's like she
yeah,
is useless in this context, right? And Mei Shan has successfully birthed him a son as well as the first wife. They have a son that's much older, and doesn't live in the home because he's off in the world setting his own way. And so that's this dynamic she's learning about. And she's like, shit, I fucked up. I've got to get him back. Right.
exactly. I got to figure out a way.
Yeah. And at the same time, we have, I think it's, um, I don't actually. I want to hold on to Yana and her relationship to Songlian, but her handmaid. So this idea of them even being sisters is really interesting. Like the way that it is the term of the household. They don't call each other first wife, second wife, third wife, or mistress. They call each other sisters, but they can't. It's a pretend closeness because we do learn quickly that they are constantly ultimately scheming against one another, and it becomes clear that it's in fact the opposite is true. It's Mei Zhan is maybe a little difficult, but she's very straightforward, right? And
Yeah,
it's the second sister Zhou Young who's truly scheming and manipulating, and she's the master manipulator. And Mei Zhan finally has a détente with Song Lian, and kind of spells this out. It's like, I've had no luck with her, right? Good luck to you. See if you can get by her because I can't. And what this leads to is she's telling this story of, I love this line, Zhu Young may have a Buddha's face, but has a scorpion's heart. And, she discovers this doll in Yanner's living quarters that has needles in it. Like it's like a voodoo doll, if you will, and because it has Songlian's name on it. And she knows that Yanner could not have written it. And there's also the story of, Meishan tells the story of how they were both pregnant at the same time. And basically, Zoyoung tried to poison her, because she did not want there to be competition for who's produced offspring for the master. And
yeah,
so
and it
you
goes
go ahead.
beyond that, as we'll learn, right? Like, she's not just trying to poison her, right? She's making very strategic um, relationships, to try and subvert everyone's relationship other than hers to the master, right? She's
Right,
doing anything she can to get her
right,
piece of the pie or more.
right.
And it goes back to that. Like, they're forced to do these things. And, like, do
Hmm.
I hate Sister Wife too? Right now, almost I'm quoting Big Love now. Do I hate the second sister? No, I don't. I
No.
within which she finds herself, and that's kind of like, for me, the bigger question of this movie is they all find themselves within a system where they are kind of set to attack each other, right? It's like putting
Yeah.
2 dogs in a dog fighting ring and blaming the dogs for attacking each other.
Yeah, they all have their gambits, right, to try to gather attention. Like Mei-Jean feigns her illnesses, and Zhao Yang is feigning kind of warmth and innocence. And then Song Lian stages like the ultimate gambit, right, where she feigns pregnancy. Okay.
Which is
And
great.
this is the way that she brings all the attention back onto herself. And it was a gambit because she's like, well, if I got the master back, I figured I'd then actually be able to get pregnant, and then it wouldn't be a fake pregnancy. And this is where Yana, her maid, really starts to come into play really significantly.
But
So,
again, I mean, before you go to Yana, and
oh,
that's a
sure. Yeah.
show is it's important to realize, like, for her to feign pregnancy is not only very dangerous because of the implications of learning that she's feigned it, but on top of that, everything you get is reason enough to try, right? You get
Yep.
nightly, foot massages, you can call whatever you want in terms of the menu. He will light your lanterns every night and stay
Yeah.
with you. Like, you're queen of the castle. You decide what you want and, what you wanna do. You become the shit because you're gonna give the master a child and potentially, beyond all things, a male child. So
Right.
it's interesting how as soon as she takes that gambit, her whole life changes. She's
Right.
happy. Like, you know, she's the shit.
And she even, it gets so she's so successful at becoming the head of the household. She is compels second sister, who she's learned at this point, and we'll set up how that happened later on. Um, has been working against her, and she compels her to give her a back massage. And second sister's like, how does she know I give back massages? It's like,
Exactly.
well, the master must have told her you give a good back massage. And so she's forced to give her a back massage in his presence. So she becomes subservient to Songlian. And that is like galling to the highest rate for her. It's like, I'm being forced to not only, be secondary, I'm not getting my lanterns lit, but I'm also being forced to be your servant in this moment.
And servitude plays a big piece of this, and you're about to
Correct.
deal with silent
Yaner.
sing Yana, but how do I say her
Songlin. It's
song?
Songlian. So Songlin.
Very
I don't
good.
know.
Thank
I mean, I'm doing my best
No,
here.
no, 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 that works.
And
You're
it's
doing
funny that
great. You always
and,
do with the names. You
and
do.
so one of the sadder parts of this story is this learned oppression of those that are below you. So we've talked primarily about like this kind of competition that's along a horizontal spectrum between the sisters and trying to assert your dominance in that level. But then there are the servants that are below you where you technically have dominance. And Songlin learns very early on to punch down very hard. And it makes, it's that classic upstairs downstairs battle. And Yaner, who is very stubborn because she had fantasized about the idea of becoming the fourth mistress. I mean, clearly it's implied that she had, the way that the master's already, was handsy with her, that this had already happened. Right. And so this led Yaner to believe, even though she's a servant, maybe I could become the fourth mistress, but no, of course not. And we have this educated woman showing up. And from the moment they meet, this is the first person basically that Songlian meets when she first arrives at the household, and she's washing clothes. And Songlian is actually quite polite to her, treats her as an equal. It's like, oh, how, like, basically, pleasant conversation. And Yana immediately snaps at her, and Songlin immediately learns, oh wait, this is someone I am above. I'm not going to be allowed. I don't talk to. I don't try to relate to. And immediately she makes her go get my bag, take it to my house, and that's the beginning of a lot of her asserting power and her becoming more and more cruel. You know,
Yeah. Yeah, and, it's interesting because she learns ultimately as they go through this, there's a back and forth between them. And I love that the freaking servants in this household are pretty like mouthy. Like
Yeah.
they're up off the thing, and they're like, "Screw you," and they run
I
away.
love, yeah. We, we have Song Ling again going, Yatter, Yatter. And she's like, huh? Like,
Exactly. She's like, and there she's basically not all that. She's clearly not a fan of Songlin. And on
no,
top of that, she like resentfully does anything for her,
right.
right? She kind of works against her. And it kind of makes for almost a comic piece, but also
I
there's a lot of
agree.
action there. But
Yeah.
then what we start to learn is that that Yanar is working with the second sister.
Yeah.
Uh,
With Zhu Yang and yeah. And they're part of the scheming
they're
together.
part of a scheme, and basically the second sister is doing that because she'll do whatever she can to get
Mhm.
more time with the master. And so what has happened, we learn, is through one of their many fights, Song Lin finally goes to, do you remember why she goes to? Oh, I do remember why she goes to Yanar's.
Yeah, well,
Um,
wait. Let's.
let's
It's
not get
important to
ahead.
like frame some more of like Yanner's and
Right.
Sunglin's relationship. So when Sunglin is formally introduced to her housemate, she's like, "Oh fuck, this woman," this one she just met, and so she immediately like is you know, brutal. And she's like, does she have lice in her hair? She
That's right.
smells. She needs to wash her hair. She needs to clean my clothes. And one of my favorite, speaking to the comedy, she takes her clothes and she's walking to the laundry and she's like spitting in her clothes, which is really funny too, because she's about to fucking wash them. But this is like where
Exactly.
she gets some satisfaction. And this happens on more than one occasion in the film. Um, and Yana does her best to stand her ground and kind of assert herself. And she's always, as I already mentioned, she's always a bit out of range of Song Lian's shouts, and that is slightly comedic. And she intentionally performs a bad foot massage because Song Lian's so jonesing for like one of those like hammer massages from Auntie Chow, and but it's really sad because as you described, it's Yanner who ultimately rats out Song Lian's pregnancy deception by finding like menstrual blood in her laundry. And
Exactly. And then
she goes to the second sister.
she does. She tells her the second sister uses it to bring in the
Yeah.
doctor Yao. Yao, or is it
Yeah.
GA? So Yao. He comes in. He basically tells the master she's not pregnant. As a result, Song Lin, who knows what happened because she can't find her white, pants or
Yep.
whatever, knows that basically Yanar sold her down the river,
Yep.
goes to get Yanar's basically her room and finds all of these lit lanterns.
Right.
She's like,
And this had actually happened earlier. How she finds her room. I mean, we'll jump forward again to the outing scene, but earlier she's looking through her suitcase and she can't find her
"Oh, for the
flute. Right.
fruit, you're
And
right."
the
That's right.
flute, in Chinese culture at this time is very much an instrument only played by men. And it's missing, and it's her father's flute, and that's why she has it, and it's gone. And she of course blames Yana, and this is when she's like her peak abuse. She drags her to her room, and as you described, discovered that she's hung these like paltry red lanterns as part of her fantasy of being part of the house at an upper level, not out of the house but just a higher point in the house. And she kind of mercilessly beats her,
Yeah.
and says, "It's you took my flute." And she's like, I didn't. And she's like threatening, "I'm going to tell the master about the red lanterns and you will be cast out of the house." And so that's the setup. Ultimately, she figures out, now jumping back forward as you described, she recognizes that Yana has outed her about the pregnancy.
And it is worth saying, and you're right, I got that timeline wrong, but it is worth saying that when she does figure out that the flute and she figures out what she's doing and she finds that Cupid doll with
Yeah.
all the pins in it,
Yeah.
that the second sister had basically showed her how to write or written her name because
Yep.
the servant is illiterate. So that's how she knew that the second sister was a snake in the grass.
Correct.
So it was at that point where she stopped and she's like, "What am I doing?" Right? She had a little bit of a come to,
It's
like, "I'm
true.
not," yeah, she was almost like, I'm," and that's one of the great tensions with Song Lin as a character.
Hmm.
She
Yeah.
is trying to resist with all
Hmm.
of her might, falling into the logic of this house or
So
the
true.
logic of this broader system. She
Yeah.
is doing everything she can to resist. But the one of the larger messages of this movie, and it's a little bit depressing, is
It's very
doesn't
depressing.
matter. The system is gonna fucking take you by the neck
Yeah.
eventually and make
Literally.
you play by its rules.
Yeah.
And yeah, literally, like, and if you don't play by its rules, you're literally gonna go by the neck. So it's an interesting moment where throughout the movie, Song Lin at various times is resisting. She's
Yeah.
saying, "Oh, I don't need him," or "It doesn't matter about the lanterns." But something always brings her back into the systemic logic of
Hmm.
this moment. And I really think that's why when I think about this film, I think of it as family as system in some weird, interesting way, and as an allegory broadly for maybe the changes happening in China.
Yeah, you're right because she does briefly show Yana mercy after mercilessly beating her. You know,
Yeah,
when she recognizes it's truly her second sister, Zhu Yang, that's been working against her, and she's like, "Fuck!" And the funny thing is, it's played out. She's like, "Did first wife do this?" And Yana's like, "No." And then did Mei Jean do this? Who she of course thought it was like. She's like, "No." And she's like, "Oh, that Snake, the one who's been so friendly and given me
yeah,
silks and taught me the rules and has been so cordial. She's the one. She's the true schemer." And and it's really sad moment because as you said, she has been trying to resist, and what resistance truly means, we're going to talk about at the very end. But back to this moment where she recognizes that Yana has been scheming with second sister and her pregnancy has been outed, and she's um, then compelled to go back to the rules of the house. It's like, oh, these, because what happens is not only does her lanterns get blown out, but for the first time in the film, they're covered in black shrouds. And this is like a punishment that exceeds all others. This is, you were being kind of pushed out of the society of this mini household system,
yeah,
right? You are now being kind of, left on your own, and like you have no stature anymore. And
yeah.
so go ahead, you go ahead.
No, 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 go.
And
Michael,
so,
go.
and because she realized, okay, so these are the rules, it's my turn, right? If this is the punishment, I'm going to met out the punishment that I'm allowed to met out. And she forces Yaner to be publicly punished, even though it's kind of extreme. And she goes to her room and she takes the red lanterns and she throws them into the courtyard in front of everyone and say, "See, you think I'm breaking the rules? Look at her, look at her." And Meishan's like, "What are you doing? This is the behavior of a servant." And that's what's so sad. It's just like she's saying, like, this is beneath you what you're doing, but she can't help herself. That's the whole point. This is the last power she has at
Yeah,
this moment.
and she, defers to,
First wife,
the
yeah.
first wife, and the first wife, and as we've kind of seen throughout, she's just like, "Whatever the custom rules are, that's what's gonna be applied here," and it is burn the lanterns, and then she sits there until she asks for forgiveness. And it's snowing, and you get this sense that she's in the snow sitting on her knees for hours and then finally passes out. And what we learn once she passes out is, she's truly sick. And at that point, what has become a punishment kind of is a life and death situation. She's rushed off to the hospital, and we find out soon after that she died.
Yeah.
She's, that punishment and that power trip has led to the death. And I think it's interesting, right? Because these simple things start to add
Mhm.
up. And the consequences, which you think are just me asserting my power, has real implications on the people beneath you.
Yeah. And that's the thing I think it's going to be so interesting, and as we eventually sum this up, is this: the system is going to win, but it's doing so in the context of creating these characters that you become sympathetic for and have empathy for, um, that are being oppressed, even if they're oppressing one another. Like you've already described, like it's not like Zhu Yang's truly a villain or a villainess, right? She's not a clear, like, oh, this is the woman, the true schemer behind the curtain. Oh my gosh, the reveal. Now we all hate her. You're like, no, she's just trying to, because she is earlier in the film scene with the master, in one of the moments where the master's, annoyed with Song Lin, and Mei Shan is being a pain in the ass, and he talks about her being a pain in the ass and her incessant singing. um but she's giving her master a back massage, and like imploring, like, I want to give you a son, I want to give you a son, let me give you a son. And so she has so little power herself. We're seeing this, like, she's older and she knows that her age, she's eventually going to become like first wife, is this character, this figure in the household that is just like whatever, basically.
Yeah, totally. No,
And
looked beyond or looked after. And there's also that, like, we didn't even talk about, you know, the question of gender, age, you know,
mhm,
the ability to give children and all.
yeah,
And then when we talked about the fact that if you're, a female child, you're useless. Like,
yeah,
there is so much going on. And so many of these fifth generation Chinese movies, at least the ones I've seen, are from the point of view of a woman who's struggling like that. Another great one from 1994 is Irma, and it's about this woman who's working and does everything she possibly can to own a television. And like, and she's in the country, and that's the whole movie. It's a wonderful movie, but
oh, I want to watch that. That's like the white balloon.
it is. It's very similar in that regard. But like a lot of these point of views, at least for the films I've seen, and Farewell My Concubine plays with this a bit too, is this kind of female point of view in these systems.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that, right? And
Yeah.
that's something really unique and powerful about the films I've seen from the fifth wave.
Right. And so this leads to probably, I think, this kind of culminating moment where you're like, oh, and it gives you the briefest glimmer of hope within this system, where you see Mei Shan and Song Lian really kind of warm to one another in their shared misery, ultimately. And this is where they're on the balcony. It's winter time, snow is falling. They're very bundled up. And, Mei Shan's like basically talking to Song Lian. And it's like, dude, what were you thinking? Doing that with Yaner, that was like really stupid. But at the same time, she's recognizing, like, she knows she's a performer, right? She's a former performer in the opera, and you get a sense that she was a famous performer. And we've even heard records of her performance during the mahjong game that she
Which is
played with the doctor.
when you finally realize, oh, this has got to be the 20th century. Because up to then, you're like,
Yeah,
when is this
this
taking?
is true. Yeah. Well, other actually, I would push back against that. Like when Song Lian enters the house initially, she's wearing clothing of like a university student that is very
Yeah,
modern. She's wearing a skirt and
but
a blouse. So, but that is quickly discarded. She loses her modern identity very quickly.
truly,
In
yeah.
one of the
Good.
first scenes, like, she's told by the master, put on these clothes, then take them off, hold the lantern next to your cell so I can observe you. And and part of the funny thing is a brief aside before this scene that's so important, is part of that, like, woman's point of view. It is still like you're still leering at them in a way,
Yeah,
right? Because the
true.
way that, because we are only seeing the women and never seeing the master, we are actually just observing them. And so that quote unquote idea of the male gaze is kind of there at the same time as we're focused on their perspective of all the things transpiring in the household. But it does culminate in this moment where Mei Shan does this kind of Shakespearean almost type of speech. What does it all mean, right? And she says, and I'll read the quote. It's like, good or bad, it's all play acting. If you play well, you fool the others. If you play badly, you can only fool yourself. If you can't even fool yourself, you can fool the ghost. So if you play well, like, and you sense, like, um Meishan, when she's pretending to be sick, she gets the attention of the master, and everybody is like fooled because she's pulling it off. Or even the pregnancy is the biggest gambit, and it works so well. But then once it fails, you're only fooling yourself. Like once the gambit fails, you can continue to believe it might work, but it's not going to. You're only fooling yourself. And then finally, when you're not even fooling yourself, this is when you're going to go mad, right? Because you're seeing too much of the truth. And that's, I think, where this film is going. And this is the saddest thing. And then Song Lian's response, people breathe and ghosts cannot. That's the only difference. But then she says, people are ghosts and ghosts are people, meaning like we're just stuck here. There's no getting out of this. This is her final recognition. Like whatever I see or try, there's no, and she's understanding, oh, this is them both speaking. The system is here and we are powerless amongst it.
We're in it. And this is when she turns to drink. And that doesn't work very good for Song Lin. It's her birthday, and she kind of, doubles down, drinks a lot. And it's at this moment where she kind of gives away Mijan's secret that she's having an affair with the
Yeah.
doctor.
Yeah.
And that's where we kind of get the culmination of the movie,
Yeah.
because wife number two, seeing her opportunity, because she's the one who's dealing with Song Lin while she's drunk, says, "Oh wait, what did she say?" Confirms it, and then has someone go out to the town where Mijan and the doctor are caught in bed together. And then this is kind of where the whole situation kind of reverts to feudal China or feudal
Yeah.
wherever. And you have them taking her screaming up to the top of the roof where there's this small, room that they've been referring to, and Song
The
Lin
death
has
house.
basically
Literally.
a charnel house, right? And
Yeah.
it's essentially where
It's
if a
Chekhov's
woman,
death house.
if a woman cheats on the master, or has an affair, this is where they go and they're hung.
Yeah.
And she witnesses, I guess, not the hanging, but the aftermath. Song
Mm-hmm.
Lin does, confirms that it's happening, and then she goes mad. She calls them all murderers, and there's this great long shots. I love the way he uses these
Mm-hmm.
long shots to almost distance you from the action,
Yeah.
but allows you to see the entire space within which it
Mm-hmm.
happened. And really just the way he deals with the tops of the houses and all these, like, even just the architecture of system in this is super interesting to me. The
Yeah.
way in which he
It's
managed
funny. It's a real world, right? It's a world,
it.
but it's an imprisoned world. And one of the things, what was so remarkable is like you brought up, oh, it's her birthday and she's turning 20. But the funny thing is, it's like prison time where time doesn't make sense. Like it
No,
could have been 10 years later. It could have been like weeks later. Time is and the funny thing is there are these interstitial cards of like, summer, fall, winter, and then spring again, or the next summer. Actually, they jump right to the next summer. And the funny thing is, because there is no spring renewal, it's just the doldrums of summer right away, immediately. Is when she said she was 20 because we knew she was 19 from the start of the film. I was like, oh, fuck, it's only been a year. You know what I mean?
totally.
And that's like, and that makes you really recognize prison time. Like you're like, fuck, because it's the same thing every day. Who gets the lanterns? We all stand outside waiting to see who's going to get them. The lanterns are lit, and it's either me or it's one of my sisters. And then it starts over the next day, and we have our dinner together, unless I'm breaking the rules and I have the lanterns, and I get to ask for my spinach and bean curds and then have them in my room. And my sister's like, wait, we can do that? We can break that rule? And then the first wife is like, no, you can't break that rule. And it's the same thing. And they're looking for these little edges of like happiness and difference day to day. And you're like, fuck, it's only been a year,
Yeah.
and she goes mad within a year.
And I've read about the whole idea of the lanterns kind of reflecting that internalization of power and discipline that
Mm-hmm.
Foucault talks about and all these other things. But like the idea of this being a prison is not a jump at all, right?
No.
It wouldn't be you and I saying, oh, we're going out on a limb, and the whole system within which they're in, as in prison,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I don't know. it's a different movie for us to do in terms of our Family Pictures podcast, right? And it's interesting because obviously part of this whole little kind of sojourn we're on with international 90s films is to look for alternatives to what we can get caught up with in our
Yeah.
80s or 90s or whatever films. And I love this because this is coming as a, you know, a fresh, like, kind of group of directors coming out of China that
Yeah.
are kind of thinking about and reflecting on a culture we don't know shit about. And they're dealing with a long history of struggle, and they're framing it in these beautiful works of art, right? It's everything you want when you walk into a theater in 1992 and you're blown away by a film like this that
Yeah.
is both a great story and a beautiful piece of work, but also you're hearing at the edges, like, I think they're talking about something else I don't fully understand. You know what I mean?
No, we don't. No, we didn't have the internet so easily to kind of like look things up and get some context of like the King dynasty and the prior owners of this, and even the setting, how important that must be. It's like this is a this is a home built by bankers, right? Like
Totally.
think about that. Like they are that is the biggest system that we can't access as individuals. You
They're like
know,
the
more than
Medici of China. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Like, it's super at least of this moment. And so it's
yeah.
super interesting just to see of
Hmm.
how they're using this as a historical moment to say that,
Yeah.
but also as a very contemporary moment to criticize the changes happening afoot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
and like science fiction of the '50s, using this like kind of uh, you know, Confucianism time, pre-Maoist, like semi kind of mythologized pre-Maoist time as a space that you can have this conversation about China and what their future is going to look like by looking at the past and creating these settings in which you're allowed to have conversations. Like imagine trying to have a modern patriarchal kind of control system setting that you could imagine exists, right? The control of over, you know, the arrangements of townships and where the money's flowing and bribes, systems of bribes to bring, you know, the attention of the government to bring, you know, contracts and stuff like that. It's all still there. Right. And
yeah,
that's was going on back then. And even, they don't even talk about a single contract. That's what I'm trying to say. It's like, but that's what's going on to this day is like this hope that you bring the attention of the parent communist government and they'll bless you with more money because you're doing favorable things in your township or something like that. I can only imagine. God, it would be so awesome to have a historian to talk about this stuff.
yeah, we
Uh,
will. I'll talk to Sue Fernsheimner.
yeah.
But I think for two guys on the internet, we nailed it.
And those that are listening from
Mm.
and we haven't mentioned it, but we are technically live broadcasting this as well to our good old DS 106 radio, which we both have personal affections for as a space where, you know, many a curmudgeon ed tech, you know, open internet enthusiasts would talk about their feelings as well as play their favorite music. Thanks for listening as well.
Yes. Thank you all, and DS 106 Radio for Life. This is another episode in the can. Stay tuned. We will have more from 90s international cinema on the Family Pictures podcast. Catch you soon. Take care.
Bye bye.